Yeah, so welcome to Violinshop Conversations, Ray Chen.
Hi everyone, how's it going?
It's great to have you here. Nice to be in Australia again.
Oh yeah, beautiful weather, back at home.
Beautiful winter
Parents.
day, yes.
Yep.
Yeah,
Mum and dad.
Yes.
Mum's cooking, awesome.
Yes, I can imagine. That's actually a really good start because why violin? What made you start? Why did you want to play the violin?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah.
So I was born in Taipei
Yes,
moved here at a really young age. I was about a few months old, 5 months.
Yeah.
And as soon as I was old enough to travel, my parents brought me here.
Yep.
And then, we lived in a pretty white neighborhood. Around Ascot. And my parents were like really into assimilating into the Australian culture and also letting me try all the things that they didn't have, right? They didn't have an opportunity to do, including sports, of course, and that's very Australian, but also learning music, and violin was one of these things. I also did piano, but I wasn't very good at it. There's something about violin that's just like, you start on one of those little one-quarter instruments, right? All right, here we go. Oh, beautiful. And then you can upgrade, and you feel like you're leveling up each time. Yes. And then, it feels very good. So violin was one of these, and I really took to it. I started with Suzuki Method, and then went shortly onwards and did all the AMEB stuff, which is kind of like our examinations boards, levels, and then just really got into it. And it was really quick when I realized that. Or rather, my teacher, the people around me realized that I was learning things really fast, right? And I was getting, and they call that being talented, right? That was really encouraging. And then so I really went into it.
And how did that make you feel? Like when you kind of got that, when you got that feedback, hey, you're actually doing this quite well. Like, how did that kind of make you want to get into it more? Or
definitely. I mean, I was just. I wasn't really good at anything else, so it was one of those things where I was like, okay, well, violin it is, and I happen to be good at this. I want to appreciate, I want to, treasure that, and so I really went into it. I did a bunch of competitions at Stanford. First started really small, local Stanfords, and then I went, to some national competitions, and that was really encouraging when I won those. But then after a while, my teacher was like, one of my teachers said, hey, you got to go overseas, and you got to go to either the States or you got to go to Europe. And so I tried a little program in Europe because I'd done the menuing competition the first time around, and part of that, you could go to this master course in Germany actually. So I went to Germany, but unfortunately I thought it was a little bit, the weather wasn't as good.
That's guess why we're here.
So, sorry, Olaf.
That's right.
Germany was kind of depressing.
I know Hamburg's got a most beautiful concert hall, but shame about the weather.
They don't have the Australian weather. But so that was the first thing I noticed. And I went around Easter time, so it was especially bad. It was very, very cloudy.
They've got that thing they say that the April will do what it wants, and because the weather is just fluctuates. So
is there a saying in German?
In April, April der tut was er will.
Oh, okay. There we go.
It does
nice.
what it wants. Yeah.
So I
fantastic.
ended up going to the States, and that was really I think in line with also my character and my personality as well.
Yeah. And were you motivated to practice when you were a kid?
Well, I was really fortunate that I had my mum there to practice with me, and so I was always.
So does she play violin? Or does
Mum did a little bit of piano when she was growing up, but she couldn't continue due to financial reasons back when she was in Taiwan. So I ended up doing violin, and she would be there. She would come to all the lessons.
Well, Suzuki is all about the parents getting involved, and I get a few Suzuki parents who also just learn with their kids, as adults.
I think in general it's just good to be along, have someone there as part of your journey. So if parents can do that, it's always such a nice thing, right? Because otherwise you're just kind of so lonely, especially violin. It's not like soccer, right? Or like a team sport where you can play with someone else. It's usually when you're practicing, you're just by yourself, and that can be very lonely.
I know. So I've noticed that all over the socials and things like that, this Tonic app.
I know that it can be daunting to play in front of people. It's also what's so rewarding. You can search for a piece. This is your playlist. This is what other people will see when they step inside your studio. So it could be a composer. It could be also a technique. So it could be like, if you type in left hand, oh, dexterity and speed. There we go.
Tell me a bit about your Tonic app, because it sounds amazing.
Oh, thanks. Well, so Tonic is basically a practice community, and it goes with what we were saying earlier, how practicing by yourself is a lonely endeavor. I mean, they talk about 10,000 hours to mastery, right? But it's really like 10,000 hours of solitary confinement. Yes. I know, I've been there. I've been through that. And it was always having my mum there or my dad when he was back home. They'd be in the kitchen or around the house, and I'd feel like I'd have an audience. I'd have somebody, right? Yeah. And so the loneliness of being able to overcome that and have someone to share your music with, which is really the joy of music, I think, and being used to that, which then eventually leads to not being, sort of anxious or having stage anxiety when you're performing, is a really important thing that also the app helps solve as well. You open practice rooms. The core of it is you have these studios, you open them, you're live streaming. People can't see you, so that you have these cute little 3D avatars that you can have, and then you can customize.
So it keeps the privacy, which
is
really important,
exactly.
But then that's amazing. That's fantastic, and it's like, I mean, my kids have grown up in a world where like they actually haven't grown up in a world without smartphones. And so it's so much part of their life. They interact like that all the time. So
exactly, and I mean, if you're going to get distracted, you might as well be distracted by like in feedback and encouragement, right? So people come into practice rooms and they can give you this encouragement. Oftentimes, that's all you need. I mean, imagine like you're training, you're practicing, I don't know, basketball or something like that, and you finally make the shot, you finally get the run, and then you look around and someone's there being like, yes, that's like really nice.
That's awesome. That's great. There was this moment in your life, probably, that there's sort of probably a moment where you thought, I can do this. I can kind of get to that really high level.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that moment?
Yeah, so there are a couple of moments like that. I mean, I think the first one was started as I would like to do this. I would love to do this. And that happened when I was 8 years old. I got invited to go to Japan for the Nagano Winter Olympics. And that was an incredible experience because it was the first overseas trip that I got to go on where it was about the violin, right? It was about music. It was because I played the instrument. So I got to, stay at a Japanese host family. We're still in touch to this day, like decades later. Got to try delicious food, got to meet new friends, of course play music, experience a new culture. I thought to myself, if this is what playing this little wooden box gets to, if this is life, then this is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. So that was the first pivotal moment of like, I would love to do this. And then after that, there were a few moments where it was just like, I can do this, right? And those were important for confidence, because it's always an uncertain path.
Because I mean, I'm a lot about goal setting and working, taking steps towards those goals, and I think that those moments are really important where you kind of think, yes, I can do that.
Yeah.
Did that kind of motivate you to work harder as well?
Yeah, I think that, look, at the end of the day, I was always somebody who was going to be, like, I wanted music as a part of my life, no matter what I went into, but I was also always open to trying out new things, and that's why, I do a bunch of different things, including social media, kind of like how you do it as well, in addition to making violins, right? And so for me, it was important to try everything, but at the same time, I also really needed that confidence in terms of like, okay, you can do this. And that first happened when I was 13 years old, here in Australia, here in Brisbane actually, when I won the National Youth Concerto Competition, NYCC. I got to play the Tchaikovsky Concerto, which is what I'm back here playing this week, so it's come full circle.
It's so amazing. I'm really excited about seeing that.
Thank you.
Cool.
And so that was the first time when I was like, I was 13 years old, got to play with the orchestra. I thought to myself, hey, I've just won this, and maybe I have a chance. I have a chance.
Yeah, that's great. And how did your practice change when once you kind of really realised that? Like, did it really make a big difference, or had you already?
Yeah. So my practice changed in various ways when I became serious, right? From when you were sort of like, oh, okay, this is a fun thing to do, to like, okay, now I'm going to be serious. So it started becoming much more, I think, strategic, thoughtful, I would say. Thoughtful in terms of like, how am I going to use my time? How am I going to maximize the time? Because usually if you're just practicing playing the instrument for fun, it's just about like having a great time, right? And making consistency a thing. But then suddenly when you go to the next level, you're like, okay, well, consistency is just a base level now. And now you have to think about, okay, what am I going to do to make my practice more efficient and more effective, and all the things that will help you learn more repertoire more quickly and have more depth in the playing, learn phrasing and all the things that are so necessary that people will judge you on, and you know, suddenly it's like, oh, a lot of layers going on, right? And so that definitely changed. And you know, it also around the time when people started talking about smart practicing, you know, instead of just mindless like going through the motions again and again, and that was very helpful as well.
Oh, great. Yeah, for me, smart practicing was all about making sure my parents heard me practice. At some point, and then, you know, could strategically pause for a bit in there. And,
well, I mean,
I wasn't a fan of scales.
Wait, were your parents like in the house when you were practicing?
Yeah, they were, but our house was big enough that, you know, if they occasionally heard the sounds, you know, I was covered.
I had many different tricks about to make my parents think I was practicing, including putting a book on the music stand. I'd read like Harry Potter while I was practicing.
Oh, nice. I had a client who actually, you know, this was way back. She had a tape recorder and recorded herself, and then when she didn't feel like it.
I also did that too. Nowadays with Tonic you wouldn't have to do that because like your parents would be like, hey, wait a second.
Hang on a second. Yeah, that's right, exactly. But also, yes, like I wasn't quite as motivated as you.
Understandable.
What do you love about performing?
Oh, well, the thing I love most about performing is getting to share all of that hard work that I've done, right? So traditionally, this is how it works traditionally, right? You got the learning phase, and then you've got to go and practice, right? You got to train, essentially. I mean, this is really how it goes for any sort of art form or even a sport. You train, you practice, and then you can perform. And that's, for artists, it's like the performance. For musicians, that's when you finally get to share, right? And the performance could be for your friends, it could be at a lesson, it could be a recital. It's not always like in front of an orchestra or in front of an audience, right? Paying audience. It could be just as simple as playing for another person. And so, but that's also, I think, like, when the most pressure happens, because then you're suddenly either being judged, or people have bought tickets, or you know you're at a competition, and suddenly it sort of tarnishes that feeling of like, oh, like the reward. What's meant to be a positive experience, like excitement, suddenly becomes nervous energy and anxiety, right? So people often get into this mindset. They start to associate these performance opportunities as negative experiences, and then it gets in their brain, and then suddenly you're in a cycle, and you can't stop that. So I think it's like, that's why, like, now I feel like through my way of practicing now, it's like my performances become an extension of the practicing, right? That way I'm like always practicing in front of people, there's always someone around, and that way I'm just like constantly in this, hey, let's try something new, let's try something like, and so then I get to have the best of both worlds. I get to have like what I love about performing, which is sharing in my practice room, and then vice versa.
Great. That's fantastic. I'm going to ask a little bit about like how you prepare a piece, and for me, last year you had a recital in Brisbane and had a really varied program. You know, from Stravinsky, from Baroque.
I have Beethoven.
Stravinsky, to what's the gypsy?
Some Sarasate.
Sarasate. And so it's like this incredibly varied program, and I wrote you a message. I'm going to read the message. I wrote you a message afterwards. I want to read it because it just, I read it back today just for research. I thought, this okay. So I said, hi Ray, thank you so much for the concert tonight. I didn't think it was possible, but I think you were better still than previous concerts. Your ability to tell stories with the music is just magical. And then we got to Zigeunerweisen, you literally sounded like a gypsy. Anyway, just wanted to let you know that I enjoyed every piece. I was going to say hi, but you had so many fans, and I wanted to make sure you get to bed sometime. Anyway, but the way I've just noticed, the way you play pieces, you immerse yourself so deeply into them, and your style just changes. It's literally, you sound like a different violinist. So how do you kind of prepare that? How do you...
yeah. I think of whenever it's a little bit like an actor, I imagine. Not that I've taken any acting lessons, but I think of it like different frequencies, different sort of wavelengths or different mindsets. It's kind of like for people who might not be a musician, it's a little bit like when you're in your work mindset versus when you're back at home or you're talking to your parents or you're talking to your kids. You don't want to bring that other mindset to the home, right? That's not right. Good. So when you're a musician and you're learning all these different pieces, it's you have these different hats that are labeled very, very clearly. Oh, this is the Mozart one, and so that's how I imagine myself when I'm putting on that hat. It's like, okay, this is the Mozart hat, and with it comes the language of Mozart, all the expressions, all of the right sort of mannerisms, and then you're always, I think, when you're practicing, you're just sort of like improving the hat. You're just sort of like crafting it, making sure that it's still what it's supposed to be. And then when you, the tricky thing is when you switch, right? So when you go from, let's say, Bach, and then you're going into Tchaikovsky, or vice versa, something romantic into something Baroque, then suddenly the hat must change. If you don't change the hat, then suddenly bad things happen, right? Lost communication.
Exactly. No, fantastic. Thank you. That's, like I said, I was just amazed. How do you balance life? I mean, performing, like it's pretty full on.
It is, and now oh my gosh, with Tonic as well, it's been I was just saying, I think like I've just merged all of my hobbies and interests into just one thing, and it just so happens that, I mean, I'm really fortunate that, I play the pieces I want to play. I never, force myself to play anything that I don't want to play, which is great. And even if I'm like, oh yeah, this is all right, I'll sit it aside, and then I'll learn to love it, and then if I do, then I start to perform it. So from a musical perspective, I really, have nothing to complain about. And then in terms of other things, like for example, that I spend a lot of time working on the app. There's no secret there. It's trying to eat into my practice time. I always joke that like, oh, thank goodness it's a practice app. That I'm not like somehow just like getting my time taken by something else, but it is, and it's very different, right? Because suddenly from an artist, you're sort of in this like artist's mindset of like you're in other people's frameworks, but then as a founder and someone who leads teams, you're like suddenly you're creating frameworks for other people, and it's very very different. It's a completely different sort of you're closer actually to the composers, and because you're building things, so you gotta it's like being in first person mode versus being in third person mode.
And do you do things like work out?
Stretch, I try to keep I mean, I know you are really into outdoors stuff. I mean,
I ride my bike everywhere, so
that's
it
awesome.
keeps me fit.
That's awesome.
So I don't have to think about it too much.
That's great. I wish I had more time to exercise. I mean, I do force myself, because sometimes when the jet lag hits, you've just arrived to a new country, and you're just like, the last thing you want to do is go to the gym. But like I always try to make myself have time for that, because I know that it will make me feel better, especially in the long run.
And what about like your physical health, like playing the violin? Because I mean, I was joking to actually someone else we talked here about like, who invented this thing? Like, what were they thinking? Like, to hold it under your chin. What were they actually thinking? Exactly. Because it's one of the most unnatural poses I could think of. So how do you stay relaxed in that, and how do you make sure that you don't get any injuries?
Well, actually, as you were talking about this, I was like thinking, I've started, stretching and stuff, and that's probably what I've been doing throughout this whole video. It's just like when I'm standing around, I'm constantly just like realigning my body and making sure that I'm always stretching. There are a couple of really awesome stretches that I do, that help make sure that the muscles don't clamp up, and because otherwise you end up with like weird pinched nerves and stuff like that.
I see it all the time.
And it's happened to me as well. When I forget, and that's oftentimes it's like you should stretch, you should practice, but then you don't, and then you're like, oh no, I'm living through my life choices.
Another thing to add to the Tonic app.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
Practice,
don't give me more work.
Yeah.
Practice, and stretch. No, I didn't mean to give you more work now. I want to talk about your violin.
Oh, yeah,
Tell
sure.
me about your violin.
All right, well, should we just bring it up?
Yeah, let's have a...
All right, so this is, I have here, 1714 Stradivarius violin. It's called the Dolphin. I'm going to do a reveal. Ooh. Yeah, and it's made in 1714. It's from the Nippon Music Foundation.
Yes, they've been so generous.
They have
it's
been,
just amazing.
It's really, I'm really fortunate to be able to have this one, and it has the name from the dolphin because like apparently there was a maker saw the back of the instrument and then thought that it looked like the skin of a dolphin. So it was just like
I know. That's amazing. I've seen dolphins. I maybe hasn't seen too many dolphins.
Oh, well, it is very playful in nature.
Look, it's a really beautiful back, and the unusual thing too is that the flames actually go upwards. So a lot of instruments, you look at most violins, the flames go downwards. Here they're going upwards, and they're really beautiful.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's. I've seen pictures of the inside that were taken maybe in the 1950s or something like that, and it looks like it's in immaculate condition. Like it's hardly had any cracks.
I mean, what do you think from your perspective?
It's looking amazing. I'm not wearing my glasses. I'm trying to pretend I don't need glasses. Okay. Hang on a second.
So what do you think? What do you think? Is it like?
It's in a. I mean, there's a couple of things. So it's had. I hope you don't mind me telling you about all of them.
Oh yeah, no. I'd be curious to learn more about it as well.
I mean, you've got to think this violin is over 300 years old, and to think that a violin that's been played for 300 years doesn't have any repairs or didn't ever get a bump.
Right. I mean, didn't they like just used to put them in sacks and then just like sling them on the back of the horse cart and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's right. And so I can see like there are just little cracks in the hole here.
Yeah.
That's quite normal. That's almost like I've hardly seen any instrument. I know that the instrument has a sound post patch. So at some point on the top plate. So at some point it would have had a repair just on the crack on the sound post.
But is it? Am I correct in like I've heard that the sound post crack on the top it doesn't affect the value as much as the sound post crack on the
that's
back.
right. The one on the back is like you don't want a sound post crack on the back. They're really hard to repair. The timber is so much harder.
Oh,
so
that's why. It's because of the how difficult
so
it is.
It's a lot harder to repair, and it can affect the tone. But the back is literally in an almost immaculate condition. Quite often you see a lot of the wearing around the edges, and yes, there's wearing around the bottom edge here because like people would have touched that a lot more.
Yeah.
But usually these two edges on the back are the least affected, and they're immaculate. You can actually still see the maker's work. Like this one here, there's almost no wear. It goes all the way up to because he had quite sharp corners when he first made them. I don't know if you've ever seen the Messiah Strand.
Oh, I haven't. I've seen photos of it.
Oh, I've seen it a couple of times. Once at the Ashmolean Museum where it's housed, but once they actually had the 300 year celebration at in Cremona at the Violinmaking Museum, and they had the Messiah Strad there, and then they had because a lot of people, it's so perfect that people actually thought that a different violin maker made it. They thought because Violine, famous French violin maker Violine, had it in his possession, and there was theories that he actually just made it.
Oh, I see.
Because he bought this entire collection of Stradivarius's instruments and things like that, and. But they also had a bunch of Violine instruments there, and you could see how different the style was, and even his copies. And Cremona, it was during the biennial, so it was just the town was just full of violin makers, like
we still have those these days, right?
Every year, there's another one in September, I think, this year. Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, so it's in a really good condition. So you've just got. Do you say her, him, or it, or just say the violin?
I haven't really decided. I mean, but I think it's just the violin. It's it already has a
It could
name,
be-
so
yeah, that's right. So it can be neutral as
dolphin.
well.
Yeah. Swims under whale. This is
Yeah.
dolphin. We're going on adventures together.
Nice. So, so how are things going? I mean, you've been together for a year now.
Yep.
How's the relationship?
Relationship. It was definitely I think like it was definitely this sort of situation where I was kind of like the one who was too poor to date the partner, and then the partner comes in, from the rich family, and you're just like, am I the best you've ever had? Probably not. Especially when you know that like Jascha Heifetz had this instrument for a majority of his life, and then he played on it so much, and you're just like, my goodness, like the level of kind of pressure that you have from hearing that becomes quite a lot. But towards, I would say, and then it's also quite a loud instrument.
Yes, I noticed
so
that straight away.
When I was playing it, it's got a huge sound, but then at the same time, and when it comes into the hall, it's like if you just like relax because you think you have a great sound, the intention doesn't come through.
No.
And so, and oftentimes I feel like this violin, it's so laser sharp focused that when I turn a certain direction, that particular place it's very directional.
Yeah, so I'm going to be sitting up towards the top right of you
today.
I'll
just make sure that I
just turn over a little bit. Actually, I think I've got a pretty good direction. I should be okay.
Well, actually, I got feedback today that in today's rehearsal at QPAC that like the people sitting more closer to the front, they were like, oh yeah, the sound was actually less at the front than it was at the back.
That's a sign of a good instrument. So so something I talk about with my dad all the time. So an instrument, a good solo instrument should be fairly quiet under the ear and should just like project out into the hall and not towards the front but towards the back of the hall, but not only an empty hall, it has to do that for a full hall, which is an entirely different game than an empty hall. So
I feel like this one's both loud under the ear and pretty
no, I could hear it. It's just incredible, actually. And but you're definitely worthy.
Very lucky to have it.
In my opinion, I think you're definitely worthy.
Thank you. I think bass, very deep. It's like almost like quite. It's very penetrating, and then the top is so brilliant. It's a lot of fun to play.
What strings are you playing at the moment?
So I'm using these new dynamo strings from Tomastic, and they're really great. They've got this I think they've got multiple gradients. I would say the shades are more gradual, and previously I was using sort of like pi strings also but then those tend, I don't know, like it was also where I'd switch out the D string, and I think I was using a different D and G at times because I was testing strings for them. I keep a string change diary and a bow rehair diary.
You sent me part of your string change diary once, and I was just blown away by like how short, how little your strings last. Usually, I mean, it's like a race car driver, right? Like when you're racing a lot, it becomes the wear. I mean, you know how short the bow rehairs last as well. I know. It's just they're shredded. I actually put a tiny bit more hair on the playing side as well.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
And but I try and adjust the so I have more tension on the other side too, so that because
it doesn't break as quickly.
There's more hair on the playing side, but also by having more tension on the other side, the bow stays even. Because if you put more hair on one side and left less hair on the other side and didn't put any more tension on it, it would bend the bow very slightly into to the one direction. So
right.
Yeah. But anyway, they're just little tricks, Violinmaker tricks to kind of help you out, make the rehair last a bit longer.
That's good. So it'll last 3 weeks instead of 2 weeks.
Yes, that's right. I'm actually curious. I'm going to ask you if you know how well I'm always looking for the best possible hair, and it's always a challenge. So so I love always getting
oh well, you know, I mean, thanks for always being so flexible, letting me do like a last minute. It's like a pit stop, like a Ferrari. I'm like always coming in like, Olaf, I need the rehair.
Drop everything. Ray is here. It's
I appreciate it.
Always happy to do that. I'm a strong advocate for like really, as part of learning, obviously the instrument becomes a really important part of kind of becomes a part of you, becomes an extension of you. And in my career, I have seen some dreadful instruments being played by students who are actually quite talented. I actually bought a violin at Aldi recently.
Oh,
$99.
Oh, okay, yes.
Good. Yeah. Nice. I made a video about it. It's pretty bad.
Okay.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Oh, yeah.
But the milk that I bought along with the violin was really nice.
Oh, that was good. Okay, that's good. Excellent.
So you can buy the milk, not the violin.
Okay, got it.
But I'm a strong advocate for like making sure instruments are really well set up, that the string heights are right, the spacing's curvature, and that the instrument sounds nice for a player and for a learner. What are the what are the things that are really important to you personally?
Things I look out for in a violin, for an instrument. I'm looking for. It depends on what your needs are, right? So my needs are probably very different from most people who might just be learning or just want to play for themselves. But I think that the first thing. So if you're looking for like something at different price points, I think anything under $5,000 or even $8,000, $6,000 here in Australia is going to be something that is like you just want something that's going to be an upgrade. It's going to be dependable, right? You want to have something that has a nice sound that you can lean into, is not going to betray you, kind of thing, and you don't have to fight, right? So it's just it's gonna help you, and so I think for those types of instruments, that's what I'm looking for. And then when it gets higher and higher price points, I start to consider other things like projection, which is not something that's so important for a beginner or someone who's just playing for fun. But projection becomes a thing. How many colors can you access is a good thing. Because initially you might be just happy with sort of like a general nice sound and something that just stays like really pleasant for you and the people that within a smaller room. But then let's say you're playing for halls, then and over an extended period of time, suddenly you need different colors, right? It's like a painter who only has one color. You can do a lot with one color.
Van Gogh, he only used two colors. He had yellow and blue.
Right, that's true.
And it's one of those sunflowers like that. He had two colors, and
right.
It's quite amazing. But,
it is,
But that's Van Gogh.
Exactly. And then I think that Van Gogh, just like Van Gogh, as an artist, you need to learn more from these instruments, right? Before you can go back into just two colors. That's almost like a statement in itself. I could pick up an instrument, any instrument, and make it sound at its max, probably beyond its max, right? But then if I didn't have the experience in learning and getting taught by these instruments from all of the possibilities, all the possible colors out there, then I wouldn't know which sounds to extract.
Exactly. No, that's great. And so, like, say from a Violinmaker's perspective, like if you were to go to a Violinmaker, you make me a bridge, playing the fingerboard and those things. Is there anything that you ask for that's important to you, or do you usually trust that they kind of know what you need?
I tend to I've commissioned a few instruments from Violinmakers.
That's right. But it's more. I'm talking more about the setup, so the way the fingerboard, the nut, the string height, the fingerboard, and that the kind of feeling that you get under your fingers. Of the strings under your fingers. Is there certain things that are really important to you, or?
Well, I think one thing that a lot of makers tend to overlook, at least from a player's perspective, is how comfortable the neck of the instrument is, right? And because oftentimes the neck can be too wide and very bulky, and then they're not, or like the edge is too sharp here at the nut here of the fingerboard.
I know that. So Violinmakers, I actually do get quite a few Violinmakers watching take note.
So that's something that I feel like can really help just feel more at home, at ease with the instrument. And it's like such a low-hanging fruit. It's like minimal effort, but such a huge impact, right? And then because that's the first thing people do. I mean, in this position, you like go like that, and you're like, okay, that feels funny, or it feels good, or it feels nice, you know.
Exactly.
And then you put it underneath your chin. I think the second thing immediately is just like sort of the bridge and how that is set up, because the bridge, of course, visually, and then like when you play your first note, is how curved is it, and like is it a comfortable curvature? Is it at the right height? And that seems like also like a pretty low hanging fruit as well, to make sure that it's resonant. I'm
super fussy about doing that, like getting that all right, getting the string heights exactly right. Because that finger feeling.
Exactly.
Like I've had people like struggle away, or kids, you know, when the bridge is too flat. And these kids are playing, like, why do I keep hitting 2 strings all the time, or even 3 strings?
Right.
You know, like that's when they're really flat.
Yeah, and I understand from a maker's perspective, it might not be like the primary objective, right? It's not what you spend the bulk of your time. You're spending it on the body of the instrument. So these little accessories might be like the finishing touches, but actually to us, they matter the most.
Thing, and who do we make the violins for, or the instruments for?
That's right.
It's for you guys.
That's right.
Yeah. Now, I mean, that's a thing that's been really like that's. I was saying that's sort of that where I don't compromise ever. You know, like getting that set up right.
Yeah.
I even do that on my $500 kids' instruments. I make sure that's perfect.
And good strings as well. I mean, I know it doesn't really make sense if you've only got, let's say, a $1,000 instrument, and you're going to put like $200 strings on. It might not make sense.
The value of your instrument.
But let me tell you that it does make it so much more enjoyable to play. So stuff like that it does make a big difference.
Like I've always noticed how supportive you are of young players, of up and coming players. So I think it's amazing that you went that step further and developed an app to support. I think that's
Thank you. I wanted to give people a more of opportunity, right? Like the same opportunities that I had. Because I was pretty privileged. I told the story about how we moved here, but I think I failed to mention that my parents were the one who really gave me this amazing environment, right? And if you don't have an amazing environment, it's really difficult to learn. And so that's the thing that inspires you, that motivates you, is the environment. And so I think that through technology and through Tonic, this app, that we're able to provide people, a taste of this environment that I grew up in, and that helped me learn, and that still continues to help me learn.
So, what advice would you give to young players who want to do really well as musicians?
Ooh, that's always a very, very difficult question,
It is.
Olaf. If I were to give advice, all right, so there'd be I think a couple of things. First thing would be just focus on finding levels of awareness. So awareness of yourself is the first level. Awareness of others is the second, right? And then awareness of the impact that you push out there, how you affect other people. That's very, very important. Not just as an artist, but as a musician, but also as a human being, right? But as an artist, as a musician, the third thing is so important, and often gets lost because you're, sort of in the midst of technique and making a nice sound and all the things that you need to do, just life in general, right? That it's often overlooked. And then when you're out there, you're finally up on the stage, you're finally communicating to people, you forget that. It's kind of like what we talked about with the Violinmakers forgetting, the little things, the final touches that really are the front. The first line of what we as players, sort of see and feel. So that's something that I would give as advice, is just to spend a lot of time investing in yourself, in who you are, and then making sure that it lines up with who you want to be as well, right? And often adjusting that, right? Because like, for example, who I wanted to be when I was 8 years old or 5 years old, I probably wanted to be Batman. Is not the same person that who I want to be 5 years later. And so I think having regular check-ins with yourself, especially as a musician, is so important, and can lead to a lot more happiness. And being open open to trying new things. I think that's the second thing that I would say. Just try everything and make sure that as long as the quality is always there, that you're really passionate about it. And that's the thing that I would give advice.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for coming in and chatting to us, Ray.
Yeah, thank you. Really pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's always good to have you here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for watching.